about the injury. It's not about the injury. It's about the recovery. It's about the recovery.
Hi folks, this is Paul Padda coming to you live from Red Chimp Studios here in beautiful sunny Las Vegas, Nevada, with another episode of the Paul Padda Podcast. I'm really pleased today to have a really interesting guest, David Rounds of NetEffect, a local IT company. And David, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your background. Actually, before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your company, NetEffect.
So NetEffect is a company that was established in 2001, and we're what you call a managed services provider. Typically, we, for all of our customers, we're their entire IT department. We focus on small, medium-sized businesses, helping them do everything from technical support and end-user support all the way up to CIO-level services and help them budget and forecast and develop IT strategies.
Everything from the computers to the server to problem shooting.
Everything, end-user
software.
all the way up to C-level executive consulting.
Now, if a business owner out there or an individual wanted to get in touch with NetEffect, where would they find you folks?
We're on the web, neteffect.com. You could also email sales@neteffect.com, and we'll get back to you.
NetEffect is NETEFFECT, correct?
Correct, like the net effect, the way it
NetEffect.
affects your bottom line.
Okay, very good. Well, so this is a part of the show where we always like to ask our guests to tell folks a little bit about themselves, because I think that with everything in life, there's always a human story there. How long have you lived in Las Vegas? Are you a native? What brought you to this town?
Yeah, I was actually born and raised here. I say
Wow.
the few, the proud, and maybe insane at this point in time. But so I've seen a lot of changes in Las Vegas, from lots of desert and places I used to as a kid. You drive in my vehicle out in the middle of nowhere to now there's 40,000 homes out there. So.
Look, I moved to the city in 2004, and I can't even believe how much change has taken place. Like, you go over to Henderson in that area, like Eastern, used to be sort of a somewhat busy street. Now it's just like a main thoroughfare. It'll take 20 minutes to get from one part to the other. I can't imagine what you must have seen in terms of growing up here. It's just
well,
amazing.
I remember a time when I was 16 years old, and I was driving over to the Las Vegas Athletic Club, which was the only one in town on Sahara. And the census had just come out, and it was a big deal for Las Vegas because they said, we are officially a large city now. We've hit 250,000 people.
250,000.
I was at the stoplight of Desert Inn in Sand Hill when that happened, so
Now,
I remember it like yesterday.
When you were growing up, did you ever think you'd have we would have the Raiders as our football team here in Las Vegas?
No, and I'm probably going to alienate myself, but because there was no team here, I became a Bears fan back in the day.
Oh, I can't hold that against you. I'm actually a Bears fan. Having gone to school in Chicago, and I saw Walter Payton played. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at least you have good taste in football.
Yeah, and hopefully this year it'll be good.
I know.
So
Well,
yeah, no, I'm excited about it. With the FC Lights and the Kings the Vegas Knights. It's been really awesome to see what's happening and the diversity that we have going on in our city.
So I know you're married and you have children, and obviously you've raised your kids here, and you were raised here. One of the things I've observed as someone who came here from the outside, I think Las Vegas gets an unfair rap sometimes. People say, oh, this is not a good place to raise your kids. And I have so many friends who were born and raised here, and they're like doctors, accountants, bankers. I mean, people who are really well adjusted and have done fantastic. I think, kids can get in trouble anywhere. I think this is as good a city as any to raise your children, and the fact that you chose to stay here, even though you grew up here, is a testament to, it says something about this town.
Yeah, I have to say, there's like every city, there's good and bad things.
Sure.
My kids have done well. I have 3 kids one's now graduated college and from a Pac-12 school, and now 2 others that are in a Pac-12 school. So
fantastic.
They've had their opportunities. It's the city, the environment, and frankly the parental upbringing is what makes them who they are.
I couldn't agree more. So what is it about Vegas that you love the most?
Well, I was just talking to someone before I walked in here. It's my oldest daughter, for example, is in Seattle, and I don't know how she went from 265 days of sunshine to 265 days of dreariness.
Right.
I love the weather. I love the city. I love the growth.
Yeah.
I love the diversity. Vegas is not a stagnant city. I mean, when growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, 10,000 families a month moving in town, there's always something new. There's so much opportunity here.
That's really true.
And that's especially for small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, which the last statistic I heard was we have more small businesses per capita than any other city. The opportunity is here, and it's not just in the casinos.
You know what? Those are great points. I really love the ethos of the city, and I think you used the word opportunity. For those of us who are transplants to this town, this is such a welcoming city. There are towns like New York, LA. It's hard to break into those inner circle. I was a government attorney. I was able to hang out a shingle. I couldn't do that in a lot of cities. It really is. You're absolutely correct. It's such a welcoming town. There's so much diversity here. It's a great city to be a business owner. And there's so many resources, and there's so many people and even government institutions that kind of welcome folks from other places to come here, people with good ideas who have a good work ethic. If you want to make something of yourself, if you want to build a business, this is one of the few cities left, I think, in America where the barriers to entry are not as significant as in other places, and it can really be done.
Yeah, there's a lot of things with the Governor's Board of Economic Development and the Las Vegas Convention Visitors Authorities Development Authority. There's so many opportunities here for whether you're small, medium-sized, or even large businesses want to come into town.
Yeah.
And I don't think you really find that in many other cities. I mean, everyone wants to attract businesses. And Vegas is still a small town. You mentioned breaking into here. It's about your reputation, it's about your honesty and your integrity, and that's what makes a difference. And if you have those things and you get to know some people in town, you can do really well.
Now, how did you get into the computer industry?
Well, I've always tinkered with computers. I mean, back when I was probably about 10 years old, my grandfather sold his business. He was a business owner, and that's kind of been my inspiration. And he had bought an IBM PC Junior and back in the day, and at that point, I promptly ripped the cover off and took every part out of it, and he pretty much let me have it after that. But I tried my things. I did some business sales and that type of thing, and I just really love technology. And I went to work in technology, and I worked for some companies where I got some great large company experience and enterprise level experience, and realized there was a huge niche that was missing here in Las Vegas, was how to help the Las Vegas community and our small business owners really elevate their level of technology so they could have a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
So after doing some consulting and such, I started the business in 2001 and out of the garage, kind of like Bill Gates, although he's been much more successful than I have. And just ever since then, helped, somewhere around 700 different businesses grow in different places in their business with technology as their foundation.
Well, in the interest of full disclosure, you are our IT vendor as well, and your folks do a phenomenal job. Net effect has been amazing. We couldn't achieve the growth that we've been able to achieve as a law firm without you as a partner doing all the things that you help us do on the back end. And that brings me to another point, just the challenges of running a business nowadays. There is so much software, there's so many technological solutions that can make the workplace more efficient. But then if you're a business owner in whatever industry you're in, just now speaking as a lawyer, I don't have the time to focus on all of that. And so that's what's interesting about your business is that you described it as like sort of the outside IT department. And I think that's a really apt way of describing it, because that's kind of how we look at you in terms of, if there's a problem from software or even just coming up with a solution to a problem, helping us find the right software, you must see that all the time in the various businesses that you help.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest advantage we can offer, and probably the one that's taken advantage of the least. Is, typically businesses look at us and they look at us for just fixing their computers or taking care of their end user.
Right.
Years ago, technology wasn't a competitive advantage; it was just a cost center.
Yeah.
And and it's just something that an owner has to write a check for, an executive has to write a check for, and every time they did it, they kind of were looking down and upset. And now to be competitive in today's marketplace, there's social media, there's all sorts of different technological advances, and AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, CRM systems, big data. Those are all things that are used in the bigger companies in order to elevate their businesses. And a lot of that can be focused down and tailored to small, medium-sized businesses to help them get that same competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And that strategy session, those conversations, is the things that, frankly, that's the favorite part I get to do, is having conversations with the owners and talking about where do you want to take your business. Years ago it was develop a business plan and you can grow.
Right.
And what's been left out of it in the past, and it's getting better now, is you have to have a business plan, but you also have a technology strategy. You have to have, that has to be an integral part of your business plan.
So you may recall some of the conversations we had. One of the big issues we had as a law firm was, do we go to the cloud or do we get our own server? And that was something that, as an attorney, most attorneys are very retentive about their data and having it on site and all the protections that were required, but I know a lot of law firms are now in the cloud, and it's sort of just, it's really an either or thing, but this is obviously a challenge that other businesses face. Tell our viewers a little bit about what are the pros and cons about having your data in the cloud versus having a server.
Security-wise, technology-wise, there's a lot of pros to it. Being able to work anywhere remotely securely as opposed to being tied down in an office can be a huge advantage.
Yeah.
It does have some risks to it because you have to make sure the security is in place so that you can lock that out and you don't have any potential data loss or they call it DLP, data loss prevention, from employees taking data they shouldn't. Business-wise, it's two different financial models, and this is an example where I was talking about, we really have to talk about the strategy. One model is capital expense, where you're buying things, you're investing in it, and the other model is operational expense. It's not a technological question, that's a business philosophy of the way you want to run your business.
Yeah.
On one side, I'll say, you can manipulate data and statistics any way to make it fit. But what I'll say is there's a reason why the technology industry, and I'll probably get in trouble for this later, but there's a reason why the technology industry is going to a subscription-based model, cloud-based model, and that's because those manufacturers in the long run do make more money.
Yeah.
But they also provide more value to the individual business owner. More security, there's constant development on it, more reliability, that's the biggest one. If you own your own server in a business and that one server has a failure, you're down for the day.
Yeah, that's true.
Or more. Depending on what your strategies are. You're in the cloud, if your internet goes down, that's about the biggest risk you have in a business, then you just send your employees off or hook up a hotspot. So you pay a little more, but you also have more reliability and business continuity. And nowadays, you can't be without your email, you can't be without your server, you can't take care of your customers unless you have that constant availability. So goes both ways.
So so just so we're on the same page, what exactly is meant by the cloud? Because I think a lot of people have different ideas about what that means, but essentially you are renting space on a much larger server, right? Like through Amazon or Microsoft, is that correct?
Yeah, well, Google's building a data center here, as you may or may not know. So yeah, there's.
I think I've heard that company's name before.
Yeah. There's several different iterations of the cloud. So you have hardware as a service, where you're just renting space like you're talking about for your server, and you're running your own applications on it. And then you have public versions of that, or your own private ones, or some hybrids. And then you have software as a service cloud, whereas you're running your application from somewhere else. They have it on a server, but you only see the application. You don't see all your servers. So there's several different iterations. That most of the line is business applications, like the software used in law firms and electronic medical records, and I can continue to go on and on with every different industry. They're a lot of the vendors, as opposed to you spending a bunch of money up front for software, they're going to a subscription model, and they'll charge $20, $30, $50, $150, $200 a month per user, depending on their application. And you're just running the application and in the space to run it and back.
Yeah.
But you're also constrained a little bit by what they're allowed to give to the masses. So if you have it on your own server, you could have a little more customization on it. You're not constrained as much. Again, there's trade-offs to everything. There's no benefits without costs in any form of life. So,
well, one of the things we thought about, I remember, was just having, being in the cloud, of course, then you don't have to invest the same amount of money in the hardware. As far as the computer is not as important, right, than the central processing unit, the CPU, if you will, or the desktop. It doesn't have to be the highest end model as long as you have access to the cloud.
And again, it depends on the model you're using. So yes, I mean, if you moved your stuff to the cloud, for most intents purposes, you could have the power of something of your cell phone that's plugged into a monitor, a keyboard, or mouse, or your iPad that's got an external keyboard plugged into it, and you could pretty much run your business off that, depending on the way it's designed and developed and what kind of model that the application you're using is. So you don't spend as much on the end user machines, and potentially, and there's still some reasons you need to have at least some end users with higher end machines. So you can lower the price there, but you're paying a little more for the hosted services than if you had it in there, hosted on-prem or on-premise. So like I said, there's costs and benefits for everything. I wish there was a simple way you can say yes or no.
From a safety perspective, is there an advantage between a cloud versus a server?
I would just say you want to make sure that you're with a reputable provider. If you're doing things like that for the cloud with critical data or personal information data where you're worried about exposing that data, you want to make sure you're with a Google, with an Amazon, with a Microsoft, or another provider that's got those protections in place, has already been SOX compliant or Graham-Leach compliant or GRPDR, whatever that one is.
Some
So
acronym.
that they have those compliance mechanisms in place, HIPAA compliant, stuff like that, and then you know you're pretty safe on the hosted applications. None of that matters if you don't if you're doing a hardware as a service where you're just doing virtual computing power, which knows you're replacing your server but on their platform.
Right.
If you don't secure your own systems. So, and multiple areas of security are what's critical regardless of where it is.
Okay.
And the end users are frankly the biggest risk.
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, this is the segment in the show where we take a little break. We have this section called Paul Padda for the People, where we throw out some tips, some legal information that will hopefully be useful to our viewers. And with that, we'll just take a short break. Hi, folks. Paul Padda of Paul Padda Law. Paul Padda for the People, bringing you another great pointer for today. Hey, I get asked a lot, what is a medical lien? Clients come in, and sometimes there are clients who don't have health insurance, and that's really actually very common in America today. There are a lot of people out there who don't have health coverage, either because they can't afford it through their employer, or they just don't have it, or they don't have a job, but they don't have health insurance. But they're involved in a personal injury accident, and they come in and they wonder, well, if I don't have health insurance, how am I going to get medical care? Well, that's where the concept of a medical lien comes in. A medical lien is a lien that a doctor will assert. Essentially, the doctor becomes a creditor on your personal injury case. So let's say you come in as a client to Paul Padda Law and you say, I don't have health insurance, what can I do? Well, we'll refer you to a doctor who will treat you on a medical lien. And what that is that the doctor will say, when your case settles, then you can pay me all the medical care that I provided based on your settlement coverage. And it's really a way of allowing people who don't have health insurance to get very important and much needed medical care. So medical lien in personal injury cases is a very, very important concept, and it's really a big benefit to people who don't have health insurance. Paul Padda with another great pointer. Welcome back, folks, to the Paul Padda Podcast. We're here with David Rounds of NetEffect, a great local company providing IT services and other computer support to small and large and medium-sized businesses, businesses of all kinds. All right, David, I know this is going to be a question of interest to a lot of my viewers, some of whom are business owners. Let's say someone has a small business, 5 or 6 employees, maybe even less than that. They're just starting out. They call you up. They want to hire you as their outside CTO, Chief Technology Officer. What's the best advice you can offer them as far as, just in terms of getting up to speed and running a business?
So I'll kind of tie it back.
Side.
Yeah, so I'll kind of tie it back a little bit to what I said before. Is you need an IT strategy, and before IT was just a cost center, something I had to spend money on, and my people kind of used it. Nowadays, it's kind of the foundation of your business. So it's important to invest in that like you'd be investing in the foundation of your home, and that's probably the best analogy I can do to it. Being in technology, I used to build my own computers. I used to get parts from all over the place. I used to find the cheapest things I can just to make it run, and I had plenty of time to tinker with.
Yeah.
And for your home computer, that's a great thing. But for your business, it's not.
No.
if you want to make sure your employees are productive, if you want to make sure that you are getting the most value or service to your customers and the most amount of uptime, then invest in quality equipment. Whether it's, we choose HP, but there's HP, there's Dell, there's Lenovo, there's also IBM, there's all sorts of manufacturers out there. Quality equipment with manufacturer support warranty on them, excuse me, equipment that's been tested and R&D'd and all that kind of stuff, so you know they're going to stay up. That's probably the biggest one, and also one of the bigger challenges that we have with customers, because they can see online they can buy something for $85 or $100, and we're asking them to spend $650 or $700 on a machine.
Sure.
There's value in that. It just doesn't pay off up front. It pays off over the long term.
Yeah, penny wise, pound foolish sort of thing.
Yeah, and it sounds kind of cliche, but that's what it is. And the other thing would be is make sure you don't just go buy a security device for your firewall and access point out in at Fry's or Office Max or Depot or Best Buy. Those are great places, But for a business, you need to have a commercial grade firewall which has security services built in.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the biggest challenges an individual small, medium-sized business has right now, is making sure their data and their network is secure. And frankly, with the proliferation of the cloud like we were talking about, there is a lot of opportunity, especially for the smaller business starting out, where you don't even need to have a server. You need to have some basic desktops and need to have some good security infrastructure in place as far as your firewall and such, but you don't have to invest a bunch in a server and everything. Most applications, if you're going to spend less money now, like we're talking about, knowing that it may cost you more in the future, then as I was talking about the subscription model, you can do a lot of your stuff right in the cloud and not have to worry about investing in that in a majority of the infrastructure.
You know, you make a great point, because actually I think a lot of folks who think that if I go to Fry's or I go to Best Buy, I can just buy 5 computers. So many of those computers have so much software loaded on there that's not even necessary for the small business owner. Whereas having a customized product, you know, maybe I just want a really good computer, and these are the 4 things that are really important to me. I need a word processing program. I need, you know, maybe I need some type of spreadsheet type program, and I need good antivirus software. You can help customize a computer that would actually have more benefit for a small business owner than spending a ton of money at a large box retailer.
Yeah, a lot of those computers come with a bunch of, we call it bloatware, and they're advertising things and they're fun games and that kind of stuff, but they're really resource hogs and they're productivity killers for your employees. So you want to make sure that what you have on there is the bare essential and exactly what you need in order to do business, and not much else. You already have a productivity killer with the web that your employees can do.
Right,
You don't want to provide anything else for them.
All right, so I'm being, I hear a question being thrown out. What are 3 tips to keep a computer healthy?
Do Windows updates often.
Okay.
That's, Microsoft comes out at least once a month with patches, and you definitely want to do that, especially with all the security concerns that are out there right now. The other one is make sure you have a solid antivirus. I would say the biggest concern out there is security, and especially in phishing and that kind of stuff in your emails. And if you don't know how to look at an email and figure out whether it's legitimate or not, or you're not expecting this to come from this person. We just had a client, for example, who did a wire transfer from their CEO.
Oh my gosh.
And guess what? That their CEO didn't send it. So if you're getting something that's unusual, be suspect. And I related all the way back down to like what they said after 9/11. If you see something, say something. If you have a question about it, ask about it. You're probably right. So those are probably the 3 biggest tips I would give right now.
Okay. All right, and now privacy is a big thing right now. Everyone's talking about it. There's been congressional hearings. We have Facebook. You know, it's a little concerning, like some of the technology that's out there, Apple, for example, or people even say that, you know, it's really odd that when they're having a conversation and they go look on Facebook, all of a sudden there are ads that sort of seem relevant to what they were just talking about. How much of a concern is that in terms of, is that a real thing, or is that just something that's sort of in people's
No,
mind?
it's a serious concern. I mean, I have things like Alexa and Google in my house, and you know, there's, you know, relating it to law, there's, I hear cases out there of subpoenas for something that's gone on in a house, and the first thing to do is to subpoena for what was recorded on those smart home devices. As far as the what's going on in your web browser, you know, use in Chrome, the incognito mode or some of the modes like that to kind of prevent that. But yes, those websites are tracking you. It's always a concern. It is a little bit of Big Brother out there. That's the risk. You know, like I said, there's always a benefit and a cost, and that's the cost of having the benefit of the web. Is that's how they're making their money. So yeah, be very careful about what you do and make sure you're educated in how to protect yourself and how to protect your company. Doing things like user security awareness training, that kind of stuff, so that your end users aren't doing something silly, because that information's out there. Personal information right now is acquisition from the dark web and the bad guys is a big deal right now.
Well, and then, you know, you bring up a great point. Is if you're a small business owner, let's say you have 5 employees and maybe you grow to 10 employees, now you have 20 employees. It's hard to monitor what's going on. How do you put controls on the computer so that, you know, people aren't doing crazy things like looking at porn during working hours or other just nutty stuff?
Believe me, it's happened. The best thing, if you have a commercial grade firewall like I was talking about, then you can automatically block things from known bad country actors, unless you're obviously doing business with those countries.
Yeah.
Block categorized websites, and that's kind of a default. And I know in our platform, when we put a firewall on for a customer, all those things are blocked by default. And usually, if anything, the customer is a little unhappy because they ask us to open it back up. But only that's coming from the executive.
Yeah.
Because we want to protect from that stuff, and that's how you get rid of it. There are monitoring programs out there and that kind of stuff, and I have to tell you, all the customers that have had that kind of stuff, unless they're spending the time actually watching it, and then I would ask them, watching and reading those reports, and then I would ask them, is there something you need to be doing to make more money than do this, as
Yeah.
opposed to monitoring those employees? So you put down protection to kind of block the known bad actors or the known bad sites or the wrong gambling and, well, gambling in this town, but, porn sites or travel sites or something like that, except for certain people, so the people aren't doing that at work.
Right.
You block some of the stuff like that, and you block from malware, and you put in a written information security plan into your company, which dictates computer policy to your staff.
Yeah.
And the best thing you do for that is not technological, it's policy-based, and it's from the top down, from the
That's right.
executives down. Here's what you're allowed to do, and if not, people don't have a job anymore.
That's right.
And I know that's pretty blunt and pretty direct, and maybe even harsh, but it all comes down to policies and end users and the personal side of it.
Well, the
Technology is just a tool.
ramifications are huge. Like, you could get a virus on the computer, it could affect everybody's computer, it could destroy data. If you're a doctor's office or a lawyer's office, you have sensitive documents on behalf of clients and patients. So, I mean, the consequences are grave. If, it used to be that in a business you would think of their two biggest drivers in terms of payroll and rent were the two biggest expenses. To me nowadays, I don't know how you can run a business without also putting a third leg there, and that's IT. We have to, just the world has moved in a direction where there are very few businesses that are not IT dependent.
Yeah, and that's it. That was the change I was talking about between the business plan and the IT strategy plan. Is you need to have a focused strategy. It needs to be an integral part of your business plan. And I would hope that your IT can not be one of your biggest expenses as much as rent and payroll. And done properly, you'd hope that's the way you can do it. But then again, if it's a competitive advantage to your business and that's what's making you different and generating your revenue, then it's worth the investment.
Absolutely.
So, but every business is different. Sometimes it's just what my end users have to do, and sometimes I can't do business without it.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have this, I wouldn't be generating the revenue I need to generate. So there's a different level of spend.
It's a trade-off. David, it's been a real pleasure and honor having you on the show today. I know this has been really useful and helpful information for our viewers. Once again, and just speaking as a small business owner, if you're out there and you're thinking about starting a business or you have a business, you would be really foolish not to give a strong look to NetEffect, which
you.
have been a phenomenal partner in terms of helping us take our business to the next level. Once again, if folks want to find you on the web, where would they go?
Neteffect.com, NETEFFECT.com.
And is there a telephone number they can call in?
Yep, 702-318-7700.
And physical location?
We're on the corner of Bermuda and Warm Springs at 375 East Warm Springs, Suite
Fantastic.
102.
All right. Well, David, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Folks, thank you for tuning in again to another episode of the Paul Padda Podcast. And until next time, stay cool and be safe.
It's not about, it's not about, it's not about the